Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and yesterday, Blizzard announced a handful of changes coming to Warlock, Affliction, Demonology, Destruction, all getting buffed this upcoming Tuesday on Reset. And these changes, at least for one spec, I'm going to say are legitimately massive. No pun intended. Let's get into them. I'm going to start off, jumping right into it. We're not even going to waste any time looking at one spec and going to the other. Affliction. Agony, Soul Rot, and Vile Taint buffs coming in. Now, Agony damage being increased by 10% is not like it's massive. It is going to be a buff in both single target and AOE, and to a similar extent, Soul Rot and Vile Taint being buffed by 30% and 40% respectively. So, this means Soul Rot and Vile Taint... Warlock's in an odd spot. I think most of his tuning here is like off of raid rankings and things, right? Not really based on Mythic Plus, what's happening in there. If you pull up, like raid statistics and things for, the current raid, AF's doing very well on fights like Reverb, on fights like One Arm Bandit, and even Vexy, where you can get a lot of like cleave value with Soul Harvester, upfront damage, rapture things down. Go from there. The effects are very strong. However, Affliction does lack in the single target department a good bit. Now, Vile Taint, not a single target buff, but at the same time, in M+, like buffing the damage of Vile Taint does lead to some more damage in single target, and obviously more damage when it comes to AoE. Soul Rot can be single target, but also AoE damage, and Agony, a universal buff. Now, at the same time, when it comes to Soul Rot and Vile Taint, once again, their damage themselves is not incredibly impactful. The damage that they bring is more to buff Rapture. Rapture does more damage based on the number of dots that are active on the target that Rapture hits. So Vile Taint being a dot itself, does some damage on its own, but also increases rapture damage to a similar extent. Soul Rot as well. Agony being a universal effect, that's not bad. So a bit of single target relevancy as well as AoE, but something. We'll take it when it comes to AF, right? Demonology. These buffs are substantial. These buffs are pretty big. Demon Bolt, 20% damage increase. The biggest one here, though, is going to be your Wild Imp damage increase by a whopping 25%. Wild Imps have gotten a lot of buffs since Dragonflight, like considerably. They've been buffed probably 300% at this point. Maybe a bit more, a bit less, I don't know, but they've been buffed a lot over the last couple expansions. Even like in Warwithin, they've been buffed substantially, right? A 25% buff on top of all those buffs, and just in general for imps in the first place, is a lot of damage. Soul Strike increased by 35%. Also, to clarify, this is not implosion, this is just imps themselves, not increased implosion damage. Soul Strike increased by 35%, which, keep in mind, Soul Strike is single target, but it does cleave with the talent if you're playing that for whatever reason. And then Pact of the Druin increased by 35. For those that don't know, Pact of the Druin is this. It is your Doomguard right here. Also, in Tauren causes Soul Strike to cleave, but you're not really playing that a whole lot in Plus, and I doubt it really changes much, based on buffs. But these buffs are substantial. A large increase for Demonology. We have Sims up here, I'll show you in a minute, obviously, but, they're looking pretty good. Destro, Cataclysm, 35%, Rain of Fire by 25%. When it comes to single target, spoilers ahead for Destro, doesn't do much. This is basically a wash. You really don't cast Kata in single target. For the most part, Rain of Fire, not single target. This will not make Rain of Fire better in single target, either like it was before. That was more of a mechanical thing that was fixed, and all that. I think what they're doing at Destro is trying to address its lack of upfront AoE damage. It's known for having that really strong ramp-based AoE profile. You pull multiple packs, you pull a big pack, or you do a big pull, like a Priory or something like that, or you pull all of Workshop in the first pull. Destro can nuke the world, right? When you get ramping, when you get your Withers out, Malevolence stacks, or Wither stacks by a Malevolence, Blackened Soul, Rain of Fire is fueling more stacks and doing damage. That is the profile it's known for. But if you play Destro in like mid-tier keys, and like you go into a pack and you're pugging or whatever, and at 8, 9, 10, you're pulling one pack at a time, your damage is terrible. You go in, put a Kata and a couple of Rain of Fires down on 4 or 5 targets, 6 targets, your damage is bad, right? I think this is an attempt to try and shore that up a little bit with the Kata increase and Rain of Fire increase. We'll get to that more in a minute here in Sims as well, but either way, things looking interesting for Warlock buffs here. So let's get into some Sims. Alrighty, getting into Sims here. So like we talked about with Destruction, once again, referencing these buffs again, Destro got Cataclysm and Rain of Fire. You're not casting Cata or Rain of Fire in single target. There might be a world where you're casting Cata somewhere in these Diabolic Sims here, maybe if Immolate falls, I don't know. You're not like casting it though, when it comes to these single target applications. So also to clarify, in these Sims, these are combining both hero talents in the Sim. So it's not saying that, oh, Destro gained 25k from where it was before. No, you have to compare the Diabolus Sim to the Diabolus Sim. So for example, these are both Hellcaller. You can essentially ignore these two when you're looking at Diabolus numbers, right? So for example, here's Diabolus pre-buff. Here's Diabolus post-buff. You gained 1672 DPS. That's margin of error. So you didn't really gain anything here at all. When you're looking at Hellcaller, for example, Hellcaller gained 4000 DPS. I don't know what would have changed here. Probably pretty close to margin of error again, give or take. Maybe there's a Cata in there somewhere. I don't know, but it doesn't really matter either way. Destro in single target really didn't gain much. 2.485 for the overall, I guess, Sim, give or take. And we have a Sim chart here I'll pull up. Sorry for the flashbang a handful of times. Destro is sitting right about there, 2.463. Bit lower than what it says in the Sim, but give or take, still towards the bottom end here when it comes to single target. And I think a lot of that is due to how Destro is doing really well with Havoc-based profiles and fights in the raid on Cauldron, on One Arm Bandit, on Muggsy. When you have that Havoc cleave, Destro is exceptionally strong. But the problem is, how do you buff Destro single target without buffing Havoc, like indirectly, right? You can buff certain talents, maybe that work in single target, like maybe even like Indiscriminate Flames, but that also works in Havoc cleave if they proc. So it's very hard to tweak and tune. It might just be an 11.2 thing they look at changing Destro or whatever, based on how fights look in the new raid. So Destro overall didn't really gain much in single target. Looking at Affliction though, so comparing Soul Harvester here, Soul Harvester is gaining about 52,000 DPS from where it is to where it's going, and that is once again due to the Agony damage increase, Soul Rot, and Vile Taint. If we go into the actual Sims here in a minute, we'll look at the actual differences there as well. Looking at Hellcaller, you're gaining 62,000 DPS, so Hellcaller is pulling ahead a bit more again compared to Soul Harvester and single target. Soul Harvester 52k. Hellcaller 62k, 2.521 being the AF Sim, so you're looking actually passing Destruction overall in DPS here, AF being higher in single target, and for the most part, a lot of that's due to just Hellcaller gaining about 10k more than Soul Harvester due to like playing talents like Contagion or Malediction. The talents that buff Wither also indirectly buff Agony damage, which was increased, in the actual buffs here as well, and maybe a couple other little interactions here and there. When it comes to the actual buffs here, we can pull up Hellcaller like pre-buff and post-buff, like Agony damage here. You're looking at like 10.8% pre-buff, Soul Rot sitting at 4.7, Vile Taint not cast in single target, so you're looking at 10.8 and 4.7, and then post-buff you're looking at a whopping 11.6, and Soul Rot 6.0. So about what it says, give or take. Once again, Soul Rot not being a whole lot of damage on its own, but it does further amplify Rapture as a dot effect. But this buff right here will not increase Rapture's damage. This is just straight up to Soul Rot, to Vile Taint, and to Agony on their own. So AF gains about 50k, 60k, depending on what you're doing here. Hellcaller is the better spec when it comes to single target for Affliction. Demonology. The audio didn't cut out. I'm just at a loss for words. So if you're comparing Soul Harvester is gaining 232,000 DPS from pre to post buff. Soul Harvester and Soul Harvester. Diabolist is gaining 189,000 DPS in single target. Demonology is exceptionally strong now. I've even found more damage by taking these profiles and changing talents. This profile here is playing with Anilian Training as a talent. Imperator has been better for me over Anilian Training for the past couple months in Sims. I've been playing Imperator in single target, so I took this profile and swapped it. 2.971. Let's compare that to the simulation chart. Let me zoom in for you. Huh. All right. If you like Demonology is getting a substantial buff in single target. You're looking at what? I think about like 7%, give or take, for Diabolist, and a similar amount, a bit more actually, for Soul Harvester, about 8.8. Soul Harvester still being a bit worse than Diabolist, but overall very strong. Pulling up the breakdown here, keeping in mind that Demon Bolt damage, Wild Int damage. Soul Strike is pretty much relevant. Impact the Era Druin. So we're going to look at Doomguard damage, Imp damage, and I guess Demon Bolt if you want here. Here is pre-buff demonology breakdown. So you're looking at Wild Imp damage being 13.1. Essentially your biggest source of damage, barring combining dogs together and things like that. 13.1. Pack the Era Druin should be somewhere in here. Yep, 4.8. And Demon Bolt being 6.6. Now if we go to post-buff, Imps are now doing 15.5%. Back to the Era Druin Doomguard is now doing 6%, and Demon Bolt is doing 7.4%. Plus Soul Strike's in here somewhere. It's like way over here. It's garbage. It's whatever. It's in here somewhere. I think it's somewhere. Nowhere relevant, but like, you know, either way. Demonology is gaining a lot of damage. Now, the interesting thing about demonology is that when it comes to the raid, you're obviously looking at like some fights already being demonology based, like Styx, like Sprocketmonger. Those fights are going to be better demonology fights already. Just keep playing demo. Fights like Vexy and the Gear Grinders. I think this is actually a pretty good demonology fight. You can abuse Soul Harvester AF here. Even play Destro at times if you high roll Havoc and Shadowburn RNG or whatever, but like I think you're gonna see a lot of demonology being played here. Demonology CDs line up really well in this fight with burn phases, with ag cleave and all that. To a similar extent, Rick Reverb. One barrel might spawn pretty far off. If you pre-ramp some barrel spawns, just implode, you're gonna crank this fight. Maybe even play bombers here over strength for every barrel set. You're gonna crank this fight is demonology. On Reverb. Styx and Sprocketmonger, we get even better. One Arm Bandit, the same. Muggsy, the same. Galilibix is probably going to be a demo fight. Demo is gaining a lot of damage. You are going to be the highest simming single target spec in the game, barring these sims not being wrong and barring these changes going through. But I want to drive home here that, yeah, obviously, like, the buffs are like impactful. But if you pull up actual like overall raid stats here, this is likely why it's getting buffed. There's Demo. Here's Destro and here's AF. That does not reflect what these sims show, but this is a great example of why damage profiles, niche damage profiles and things matter so much. Sims are always a great tool, but you have to use, you have to like know how to break down fights. What damage profile is good here? What's good there? This is why, I mean, to be fair, AF is being inflated a bunch by, you know, Rick and One Arm Bandit and Vexy and things, right? It's not actually this good. Right, throw AF in on a patchwork fight, it's not good, right? Demonology, on the other hand, fights like Styx, like Sprocketmonger, it's our best spec overall, right? You know, but I think this tuning is coming a lot from just raid stats overall. Demonology is already very strong at M+. We're looking at AOE talents in a minute here as well, or Sims in a minute here as well, but it's getting buffed in single target, and I think it'll catapult Demonology pretty high here, because I mean, like, it's not like Demo is bad on the fights AF's being played. I think Demo's actually pretty good on all those fights too, like Rick and Vexy, and One Arm Bandit is more Destro AF, but like, those two fights, Rick and Vexy, you can play Demo there. If it gets played a lot, it's gonna jump a lot, and it's gonna be very good in single target too. But if you're comparing Demonology to like a Devastation Evoker and their damage profile, or even like a Havoc Demon Hunter, right? Demonology's damage profile and the way that it functions and the way that it has CDs and cooldowns and pet management and things on a fight like Sprocketmonger. If you take like if you take 3 players, all the same skill level, the same gearing and things, a Dev Evoker, a Havoc Demon Hunter, and a Demo Lock. I think on average, even with these numbers here, like Demo being higher than Dev by 10k, you'll likely see the Dev and Havoc higher because of just how the damage profiles function. There's the pet AI stuff, pets running around on fights like, you know, Sprocketmonger, being a little clunky at times with CDs, sometimes CD windows being a bit awkward at times in general too, with timings and things, being a minute cooldown based class. Don't get me wrong, Demo's gonna be very good. The Sims look very, very strong, but the damage profile and the way it functions at times is still a little clunky in certain areas. It might be a tiny bit more restrictive than it seems compared to like an Evoker just vomiting blue all over everything, or Demon Hunter just jumping around and slicing things up. Don't get me wrong, Demo's gonna crank, but we'll see where it goes. Let's look briefly at AOE Sims. Now, very briefly looking at AOE Sims here, I also want to mention that, hey, we're pushing for 100k subs on YouTube this year. If you guys aren't subbed to the channel and love me or want to maybe help support me in that goal and things, feel free to possibly maybe consider subbing to the channel. If you don't want to, that's okay. I love you all the same. Had to throw that in there, but here we are. So getting into AOE Sims here, these are 5-minute, 5-target Sims. I didn't run these. They were run by Malakath and things in the Lock Discord. Once again, credit to him for all these Sims. I'm not going to go in and change Sims a bunch and run 10-target Sims, 8-target Sims for a minute and 2.5 minutes. We're just going to go off of this because for the most part, we know how the profiles look. And I want to break down what the changes are probably going to do, and these are fine for that. You've got 5 minutes, 5 targets, all this stuff here. So when it comes to, just to verify here, yeah, max time. Sure, we're good. Okay, cool. Just to verify. Okay. Yep, we're good. All right. When it comes to affliction here, so obviously Hellcaller's on top still. The AF, like Hellcaller overall is gaining what, about 300k, give or take, when it comes to the buffs due to like Vile Taint, Soul Rot, and Agony being buffed. Soul Harvester gaining about 244 comparatively. Most are still playing Hellcaller and Plus now. If you play Soul Harvester, it's fine, more of an upfront damage profile. I think it's probably a little better in some lower keys if you're playing AF, like maybe Soul Harvester over Hellcaller, but you're seeing Hellcaller play in basically all keys you decide to play AF in for, you know, whatever reason. As far as a breakdown is concerned here, looking at like pre-buff Hellcaller, we can go right here, jumping into overall damage, Agony sitting at 11.9, Vile Taint should be somewhere in here on the lower end. Once again, it's not... Yeah, Vile Taint dot 2.5, so 11.9 and 11.9, 2.9, or sorry, 11.9, 2.5, and 3.7, comparatively to, we pull up the buffed one here, 12.7, 4.6, and yeah, 3.4. So you can see a bit of buffs here coming in. Helps out a little bit, about a 300k increase. Not a whole lot though, once again, when it comes to single target. I mean, you're gaining like 50, 60k, give or take, barring talents changing, but you're not playing Singularity here, you're playing Vile Taint, and that does lose you a good bit in single target. I think that's one of AF's larger issues in Plus, is that when you're playing like Destro in Plus, or even Demonology in Plus, talents don't really change a whole lot when it comes to those settings. You're not playing Soulfire as Destro, you might play like Shadow Invocation over Imperator as Demo, right? But for AF, you're losing out on like PS, you're losing out on Infirmity. Couple other changes come in too, which does hurt your single target more comparatively to Destro or Demo in, you know, M plus based builds. But regardless, you're gaining about 300k here for Hellcaller and about, you know, 240 for Soul Harvester, you know, comparatively. Now, when it comes to destruction, you're looking at about a 335k DPS gain. In AoE for Hellcaller, and Diabolus is looking about 325. 7.639. Once again, Destro's profile, if you sim more targets here for a minute, whatever, even same duration, more targets, it would outscale Affliction and Demo very likely. I'm not going to tinker with it all. It's fine. We know how the profiles work. We played it for years now. Now, I do want to say, when it comes to these buffs, once again, flashbang, sorry, Kata and Rain of Fire are buffed here. Now, people see Rain of Fire buffs and they think, oh, this is insane. Destro's going to be ludicrous and Plus. It's going to be ridiculous. We're going to destroy everything. And that's not necessarily the way that Destro functions now. You do cast a lot of Rain of Fires. You do. But if it was predominantly Rain of Fire based like it was before in the past, you'd see more than a 300k DPS gain here in this sim. So going into like the pre-buff Destro profile here, Rain of Fire is 15.1% of your damage in AoE. Now that's not bad. Don't get me wrong. Going back to like Shadowlands, even like Dragonflight a bit, it was a lot more than 15%. The majority of Destro's damage and Plus when it comes to AoE in those large pools is actually Wither. Wither and Blackened Soul. Blackened Soul is like indirect damage essentially from Wither, right? When it comes to meters and things in Plus, it combines Blackened Soul and Wither together into one ability. If you combine that here, you're looking at about what? 47% of your damage being Wither, right? Blackened Soul is basically when Wither reaches 8 stacks or goes acute, it starts ticking down and it reduces a stack per second and does damage, right? The way you generate stacks of Blackened Soul is by spending shards. Things like Rain of Fire. Popping Malevolence gives you 7 stacks or 6 as well, I think. So Malevolence, spending shards, unlike Rain of Fire. Unlike Shadowburn, or even like Chaos Bolt, spending shards will add a stack or 2, if you're in a Malevolence window, to every target that has Wither on that. So Rain of Fire does damage, but it's more like supplemental damage to increase Blackened Soul and Wither's raw value and Plus. Also, Cataclysm being uncapped on the number of mobs that applies Wither to. If there are 1 bajillion mobs in your Cataclysm, it's going to apply Wither to every single mob it hits. It doesn't matter if it hits 1 or 1 million. It's going to apply Wither to every mob that it hits in that circle, which is why Destro's profile and Plus once again functions so well around just that mass AoE profile. Pull 5 packs, let me Wither them all. cast Rain of Fire to build Black and Soul stacks and wither them all down. Rain does damage. It does. It's 15.1%. Wither is 50%. Wither is 50% of your damage here, right? Now, looking at Rain of Fire, 15.1, you've got Kata somewhere over here. It's like, I think, yeah, Kata's 2.1. So 15.1 and 2.1 respectively, right? Going post buff here, Rain of Fire jumps to 18%. So you're gaining about 3% in Rain of Fire, and Kata goes to like, yeah, 2.7. Gains a little bit. It's not that big of a deal. Wither and Black and Soul are still 45% of your damage. So it will help when it comes to casting Rain of Fire. You cast a good bit, obviously. You cast less than you did before. The changes that came in a few weeks ago with the shard generation being changed for Wither and all that. You're still going to cast them. But it's not like Rain of Fire. It's not like this buff is buffing Destro by 25%. And I think people are missing that because they don't understand how Hellcaller functions at times. What I think this likely is an attempt to make Destro's upfront, hit the mic, sorry, upfront AoE, initial AoE, a little better. And I could be wrong, maybe it's just random buffs, but like, if you play Destro in low keys and mid-tier keys, go into a pack and, oh, go Kata, Rain of Fire. There's no damage there. I mean, Kata does damage, but not much. Rain of Fire doesn't do a whole lot. But this will help shore up that initial damage a bit. When you're pulling a big pack, you can Kata, it'll do, 35% more damage. Rain of Fires, you might not be casting a million of them because you don't have a million targets with withers on them, but when you cast them more, or when you cast Rain of Fire, they will do 25% more damage, which might shore up that, I'm insane in mass AoE, but I'm pretty bad in like mid-tier AoE profile a little bit, which is probably what they're attempting to do here. But this is not a Destro's, 25% better than it was before in plus thing. Not at all. Important to keep that in mind. But still, hey, I'll take it overall. Take what I can get for Destro. Finally, Demonology AoE. Demonology Diabolus is gaining 242, and you're gaining 324 for Soul Harvester. Comparatively, once again, these numbers aren't like super accurate because you can change durations and boss counts here. The things for Demonology, so when it comes to this stuff here, Soul Strike does indeed cleave if you're playing in Torn Armaments. We're not playing that currently, so that's whatever. Pact the Arrow Druid, that's a Doom Guard. It does single target damage. However, you do spread a lot of Dooms in M+, right? So the more Dooms you have out, the more chance you can spawn a Doom Guard. So this is like an indirect buff in a sense to like spreading more Dooms in plus, but it is single target based from your Doom Guard. Imps, single target. Demon Bolt, single target. So you're not seeing a massive increase here overall when it comes to like Demonology's damage in M+. An interesting thing here as well is that with Imps being buffed more and more and more, it's becoming... Implosion is interesting, and it's probably not worth imploding in like 3 target scenarios anymore. It wasn't even really worth it in 2 from what I heard recently. Muffin, thank you for that. I didn't even hear that recently until now. It very well might not even be worth imploding in scenarios we've previously imploded before due to how strong Imps are. We'll look more into that in the next couple days, give or take, but keep doing what you're doing for now. But if it's like 2 target stack cleave, I probably wouldn't be imploding anywhere past Tuesday. Probably shouldn't be now regardless, but that number might even climb to like 3 target or 4 target due to how strong Imps look. So keep that in mind. We'll see where it all goes. But TLDR, I mean, honestly, I'll take it. So thanks for watching, guys. Wraps it up and hopefully help clarify some of the changes that are coming to Warlock this Tuesday. Demo, Destra, AF buffs in both single target, and I guess some also in, AoE. I do want to apologize for videos being a bit slower on the channel the past week or so, give or take. Things have been sort of slow with WoW in general. We're still raiding. I mean, we're going to kill Mythic Muggsy hopefully on Sunday, if not Tuesday the latest, and all that. I have some videos in the pipeline coming out, but haven't really gotten around to putting them up yet and stuff. A One-Armed Bandit walkthrough, some other general videos I'm excited to make too, but trying to take it a little slow and not burn through all that content, before we get to PTR. But the patch is coming out in probably about a week and a half, I think now. Yeah, about 10 days, and I'm excited for it. I'm curious where it's going to go, but block seems to be juiced, so hopefully we're going to be juiced at least in 11.15. If you guys want any week orders or add-ons in the video, links to Twitch and Discord appear, as well as down below if you want any of that for free. At the same time, like always, a massive thank you to my patrons. We're all supporting on Patreon, y'all. Thank y'all a million times. Like always, I greatly appreciate all of it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, also link up here, as well as down below in the description. If you missed the video, or skipped to here for whatever reason, summary, Demo is juiced. Single target's the highest in the game now in Sims. AF, 60k buff, give or take. Destro, wash and single target. Demo doesn't really gain a whole lot in AoE, a little bit more single target base. Destro gains a little bit. Af gains most of AoE, but I think for the most part, if you're ranking all three specs, it's Demo, Destro, and then Af and Plus. And the raid, it depends on the damage profile, but Block's eating good. We're eating better than we were. So we'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.